You haven't told anyone, have you? Let me assure you, you will feel a whole lot better once you get this off your chest.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Faye Fire, aka Erin, and I am here today to discuss with you some season 4 predictions for Yellowjackets. We just recently finished up season 3, and it left us on some big cliffhangers for many topics and characters. So, today, let's get into some of the ideas of where season 4 could possibly take us and what's going to happen with the future of these characters. Now, we haven't gotten the actual season 4 renewal quite yet, but I anticipate it coming any day now, anytime. So, we're kind of left in a limbo space where we're trying to figure out, are we getting the renewal and what will happen with these characters after they are rescued? So, we have a lot to discuss and a lot of things to look forward to, with season 4 potentially coming. It's probably gonna be a couple of years before we get that, before the season is, finalized and ready to air. So I'm guessing we're gonna go into a long winter as we have between seasons 2 and 3. So hopefully we can keep it together until then. All right. So before we get started, I did want to go over, I posted a couple of polls last week, and they were relating to the end of season 3, and so I just wanted to go over those results and give a super shout out to anyone who voted on that. I got such high voting numbers. There were 2 polls, and combined, we got, like, 4,000 votes. Very crazy. The most successful poll we've posted so far. So, the 2 questions were, in your opinion, who had the best character development in season 3? And your options were Mari, teen Shauna, Misty or Travis, and that was adult Misty. And Mari, of course, won that at 43%. And of course, she had great character development throughout season 3. Her character really evolved. We got a lot of new information about her. We found out her last name and just the identity of Pit Girl. So her whole story was really fantastic for season 3. And I'm glad that she got to go out on a bang. The other question was, in your opinion, who had the worst character development in season 3? And the options were Lottie, Shauna, adult Thaisa, or Walter. And Walter won at 48%. And a lot of people did comment and say, it's almost not fair that Walter's included in this poll. But my decision in putting Walter in there was because he is such an important character, from behind the scenes. And he was very prevalent throughout season 3. He was in many episodes. So I would like to get a little more of his backstory and figure out what he's up to in general. Lottie came in second place, Charlotte Matthews at 27% for worst character development in season 3. So just thought that was worth pointing out. All right, so let's go ahead and get into our predictions. So, going into season 4, we're going to be getting into the final months of the wilderness timeline. So, we presume, based on the amount of time, we know that the girls were out there for 19 months based on when they crashed, which was about May of 1996. That shows that they would be rescued 19 months after that. That puts us in about January of 1998. And of course, there was the rescue scene from season 2, which showed the girls, outside of the airport and that kind of thing. And that was also dated on the screen as 1998. So we know that it's going to be early in 1998 when they are rescued. But seeing how we are into winter at the end of season 3, the snow has fallen. So it's only a matter of time at this point before the girls are rescued in the next couple of months. So going into season 4, we're going to hopefully get a chance to explore those final months that they're out there in the wilderness and see how things go. Now, one of the biggest questions is going to be, how will Shauna react after Natalie's rendezvous at the end of season 3, with her taking off with the phone and making that emergency call?
Where the fuck is Natalie?
how will Shauna react to this? Now we know that Shauna has become increasingly violent and sort of tyrannical throughout season 3, and so Natalie leaving was obviously a shocker. There were other people that were involved in this, including Van and Misty, but also kind of all of the others. We have Team Crazy and the others, and so the others seem to be in on it. Of course, Aquila poisoned the animals. Mari seemed to have other knowledge of it, and we've learned more and more through behind the scenes interviews with some of the cast members that Mari on a certain level she almost intentionally was going to sacrifice herself, or was intentionally okay with being pit girl. So
But then it was Mari who stepped up and said, like, I'll do it. I fucking volunteer. I'll kill Shauna then.
there's a lot, and we've learned a lot of behind the scenes information since season 3 has ended, and with a lot of these interviews that are coming out with the various cast members. We're getting a lot of information about scenes that were cut, important scenes that were cut for their characters from almost every single actor on the show. So I have some thoughts about that. We're going to get into it later in the video. But we have to wonder if the group is going to split up. Now, there's always been this idea that the group may end up splitting up into factions, because the original outline of the series, and what's even posted still to this day on the Paramount Press website as the description of the show, it states that the groups do split off into rival clans. So will we see that, especially considering how Shauna may react once Natalie gets back to camp? Are we going to see this as a real divide between them? And are we really going to have, Team Crazy versus the others in those final months that they're out there? And what sort of violence will they inflict upon each other? There are several characters who we do know die, and we don't know if that's because they don't make it out of the wilderness or they die in the aftermath. But we've learned that Jen is dead, and we don't know if that happened in the wilderness or afterwards. um and also that Hannah died, and Hannah never made it out of the wilderness. We do know that. So her death, we have to wonder, is that going to be some sort of retaliation from Shauna because she switched outfits with Natalie? And so will she receive some sort of punishment or retaliation with that? The other question is, will they be swearing some sort of oaths? Because Melissa had said to Shauna in the adult timeline, once they were face to face with each other, that something about swearing oaths or making pacts with each other. So I do wonder if going forward in season 3, or excuse me, season 4, once these characters learn that Natalie had made contact with the outside world and that rescue would be coming for them, do you think that they start to kind of knuckle down amongst each other and say, okay, this is our story, come up with like what the story is, and not to divert from that story, not to spill any extra information or anything like that? Are they swearing oaths to one another, and swearing pacts to each other, or even to their queen, now that we have the antler queen on hand? So it's very interesting going forward. We really don't know what to expect. Is there going to be more hunts? Are there going to be warring factions? Are they going to pick each other off and potentially further cannibalize each other? We really don't know. Shauna had said that they were having so much fun. And for her to spill that information at the end of season 3, when we've seen kind of the horror show that's gone on, and how violent and extreme Shauna is, and how much she's transformed as a character, we kind of have to wonder how she's going to react in these final months that they're out there. And we have to ask ourselves, when it comes to Melissa, because of the final, that fight scene that happened between Melissa and Shauna during the hunt, will will there be retaliation on Melissa for that? Or will she be sort of outcast by Shauna? Or will Shauna just be like, meh, another day, another dollar, kind of just get over it and invite Melissa back into her hut for all we know? It's a little unclear. We don't even know if Melissa has been staying with her. It seems like she's completely like, apart from that. However, she was dressed like the bunny and wearing Shauna's shirt during the hunt. So there's a lot of kind of questions of what's going to happen between those two. It seems like she's pretty much done and that she wants to go back to Jen and the others and kind of be a part of that group rather than deal with Shauna and her crazy unpredictability. So we also have to wonder if we're going to get that scene where, Hannah and Melissa, they bond. And as we understand, Melissa learned about the tape from Hannah. Hannah had asked her to bring the tape back with her so that she could give it to her daughter, which didn't happen. Obviously, Melissa ended up marrying Alex and keeping the tape a secret and all of that a total secret. So we have to wonder if we're going to see that scene of Melissa actually grabbing the tape, having it with her, bringing it back into the civilized world with her, and what she does from there. Does she hide it? Um, you know, she's keeping that. I mean, it would just be interesting to see kind of the Melissa backstory go on. And especially if we get into a post rescue timeline, which I'm really hoping that we're going to, that we're going to learn more about those details there. Now, finally, we have to wonder what happened to Akila. At the end of the finale episode, we had that scene of Akila and Lottie in the cave, and Akila is kind of confronting Lottie about her sort of filling her head with lies or misinformation and twisting the truth of like what the visions were and that kind of thing. So Akila, we actually see her pick up a rock inside the cave and they're sort of having this confrontational conversation. And then we never see Akila after that. We never see her come out of the cave. We don't see her participate in the feast or anything like that. So there are some questions on what happened to Akila. Is she still alive? Did her and Lottie somehow come to blows in the cave, or did something happen to her in there? It's a very suspicious question. And I'm concerned because I love Akila. She's such a great character. She evolved so much throughout season 3. And the other question is like if something happened to her or if like she and Lottie got into a fight, if Lottie like killed her or something like that, because we don't see Akila again. So we have to wonder about her well-being if she's okay. Um, why didn't Lottie stop the hunt if that were the case? Now, if Lottie would have attacked her and Akila would have been killed, then wouldn't that kind of end the hunt right then and there? Or was the hunt not over until Mari's life was taken? Because that's not how it went with Nat. With Nat, it was once Javi's life was ended, then the hunt was over. So there's kind of a question of what's going on there. And of course, Akila being like an oracle, Mari being like a sacrifice. Like, is there some sort of hand in hand thing in a kind of Norse sort of way, a Norse, like a Viking funeral kind of way where there would be like a sacrifice along with like, this important figure when they were, when they died? I don't know. It's an idea. It's probably a very off idea, but but the final most important scene that I really think that we need for season 4 is of course going to be the rescue. The rescue of the girls when rescue shows up. Obviously, it didn't go so well for Edwin, but hopefully when we get a new rescue team showing up, things are going to go a lot more smoothly. Or again, going back to the idea, if the groups do split off into rival clans, hopefully the outsiders, the rescuers who arrive would approach the others before they approach Team Crazy's camp, We don't really know what we're getting into. But it does seem important for us to get that scene and to kind of see how the whole rescue goes down. There are, still questions of potentially people being left behind and ideas like that. We don't really know. At this point I'm kind of less inclined to believe that there were people left behind. Obviously, that was kind of based around the idea of the Cannibal Council only having 7 people seated around the fire, but now we know after season 3 that it was a much larger party that was present for the Cannibal Council. So I don't think that we have to stress about that anymore. So I do think that there are more people who made it out of the wilderness, but just we didn't actually see them in that brief rescue clip that we did get. All right. Now going forward, I do, There's always the speculation, and I think that fans really want a post-rescue timeline to kinda see what happens with these girls after they're rescued and after they make it out of the wilderness, and then they go back home and they're reacclimating to their normal lives. Obviously, it's gonna be a major change, major shell shock. We know some of the events of certain characters and what happens to them, such as Lottie, who ends up in a mental hospital, unfortunately, in Switzerland, of all places. Uh, Shauna and Jeff, eventually they get married. We did see in season 3 there was an arrest photo of Natalie. So at a certain point, she's kind of getting in trouble with the law. We do know she kind of has a downward spiral arc that comes along with her using drugs and alcohol and things like that, and ending up in rehab and obviously ending up in jail. So there's certainly things to explore in the post-rescue timeline. I think most importantly, and what people really want to see, is the Jeff and Shauna wedding. And I think that probably some really crazy things occurred around that time. Now, we do have from season 1 a shot of their marriage certificate or their wedding announcement in the newspaper. It says on the wedding certificate that they were 22 years old when they got married, and kind of based around what what we know about these characters. Obviously, when the plane crashed, they're gonna be about 17, 18 years old. They were seniors in high school, so they're 17 or 18. So, if they're getting married when they're 22, that would be about a 4-year difference. So that's gonna put them in about 2001 was the time of their wedding. So, I think that there's probably some important information that comes along with the wedding. We know that many of the other survivors actually attended the wedding. Now, we know Ty and Van were at the wedding, and we know Mrs. Taylor was also at the wedding. This is Jackie's parents, Jackie's mother was at the wedding. So, I do think that there was probably some sort of reunion that kind of happened around that time. It would be 4 years after the rescue. Um, and their lives have sort of gone back to their, normal thing. But I'm inclined to think that something crazy goes down. Now, obviously, a wedding is a very significant event in anyone's lives, but with these girls and their history, and then all of them coming back together for like this sort of celebratory event, you kind of have to wonder. We know how the Yellow Jackets are, so we have to wonder if they're going to get up into some trouble, if there might be some sacrifice happening, or what have you. And of course, there was the scene with Jackie in season 3 where she tells Shauna that somebody wants to hurt them for what they did, not in the wilderness, but after they got back.
Someone's trying to hurt you, Shauna, for what you did. Not just in the wilderness, but what you did when you got back.
So we do know something crazy happens after they're rescued and after they return home. What that is, still not sure. Now, we have the arrest photo of Natalie that was dated from 2003. So, could Natalie be taking the fall for whatever happened once they get back? So, if something bad happened, if they did something dangerous or harmful, could it be possible that Natalie would have taken the fall for that and kind of been their fall guy? What's interesting about 2003 and the fact that the adult timeline takes place in 2021, that kind of gives us a similar age range as Callie. Because Callie's about 17 or 18. Like, we've established she's about the same age as her mother when she crashed into the wilderness. And she's kind of making plans for going to college. So we know she's about that age. So Natalie getting arrested in 2003, could Natalie be taking the fall for whatever happened after they got back, whatever bad thing they got up to? And the reason why I say this is because she could be taking the fall to protect Shauna. Because what if Shauna's pregnant right around this time? And so rather than throwing her under the bus, Natalie, being that moral compass of the group, being that good, the heart and soul of the group, would she take the fall for something that Shauna had done just to protect Callie? And what's kind of an added layer onto that, of course, is that Callie is the child of the wilderness. And so this would be their real queen. Natalie is kind of the real queen versus Shauna being sort of the figurative, self-appointed queen that she, has held herself up to be. Uh, wouldn't it be just kind of like a beautiful exchange if Natalie was the one to take the fall and to protect this child of the wilderness? It's kind of an interesting idea. I don't know if it's true, but it's definitely a something to contemplate over. We don't know what happened, but obviously some things happened after they got back, and the Yellow Jackets will yellow jacket, right? They're going to get up to their crazy nonsense that they do. The other really relevant thing that I think we need to explore in a post-rescue timeline, of course, is gonna be with Ty and Van and their breakup. It kinda seems more relevant than ever now, especially after Van's death at the end, at the end of season 3. So, their breakup and kind of what caused that disconnect from each other, we saw how they came back together in season 2, but we don't have that window of what happened and why they broke up. And we do have our suspicions. Taissa obviously is concerned about their public image. She obviously has high goals in life to be a lawyer or, be some sort of high ranking individual. And that's kind of the cause behind their breakup because Van never was really that person. She was just always happy being Ty's, wife. Happy wife, happy life. So I would love to see their breakup and explore that. We know that they were together at the time of Shauna's wedding because they say that they went to the wedding together. So the breakup would very likely take place after that. But I think it's something that's worth exploring. We also I would want to see more about Travis and the aftermath of his story. I've talked a lot about how he really has strong motivations for getting home because his father and his brother both were killed in this plane crash. Their mother is back home. So all this time she's kind of been living under the presumption that her whole family died on this plane crash. But I think it would just be so special to see Travis come back home, and how his mother will react to that and how Travis himself kind of reacclimates to society. He's had such a major change and such a interesting story arc because of his sort of toxic masculinity that he came into the story with and came into the wilderness with. And that really drove him throughout season 1, where he was kind of still clinging to that masculine image of how he should have been as a teenage boy and this kind of thing. But as we've gone through, especially after losing Javi and then throughout season 3, he's really kind of leaned into his feminine sort of energy in a sense. And we saw such a big change in him when Kodiak showed up at the camp that is sort of like sent that testosterone flowing back through his body. But, Travis is just such an interesting character. He's somewhat apart from the rest of the group, but he's doing what he can in order to survive. So I would really just love to see that scene of him, getting home to his mother and kind of her reaction, which could go either way based on how, her energy towards their dad when they were leaving on the plane flight. So there's a lot to explore there. And then finally, in the post rescue timeline, I definitely think we need to explore Melissa faking her own death. Because what's up with that? What is the cause of that? She says she was so afraid of Shauna and the others. And so it's got to be really interesting to see what led her to that point. And in my mind, I'm kind of wondering if Jen might have something to do with that. We don't know exactly what happens to Jen, but the other women say that Jen has died. Taissa says that. And so we have to wonder, like, what led to this? Does that happen out in the wilderness, or does that perhaps happen afterwards? And maybe that could be tied into the what happened after they got back kind of thing. So I would really love to see more of Melissa's faking her own death and kind of her cause behind that. And I think exploring her backstory more is going to give us a lot of that insight. So all right, so let's get into the adult timeline. And I do suspect that we'll get more focus on the adult timeline in future seasons because they only have such a short time left in the wilderness. So I kind of feel like we're going to get this transition where they are focused more on the adult timeline and then, a little less so on the teen timeline or perhaps the post rescue. I think this is important because the adult timeline has gone a little off the rails. Like, I do understand where they're going with it, but I think it just needs a little finesse, a little more time and heart written into it because everything in season 3 felt extremely rushed and just kind of crammed in there. A lot of new characters and character death that just really felt really rushed. And so I think they need a little more time to explore that. So now going into season 4, of course, we're going to have to explore, where did Melissa go? Did she go back home and act like everything's normal with Alex, or did she take off? Is she on the run now? And is she going to continue to cause issues for the other Yellow Jackets? It would be interesting to see Ty and Missy, now they're kind of in their little buddy cop situation against Shauna. It would be interesting to see if they partner up with Melissa. Obviously, that would be a touchy situation for Taissa because of what happened with Van, but it should be really interesting because it seems like they all have it out for Shauna at this point, which deserved. So it should be really interesting to see what goes on with Melissa, where she's gone off to. Now, we also have with Shauna, Callie and Jeff, they've left Shauna, and which is pushing Shauna to believe that she's kind of stepping back into her queenship and that she is becoming this person that she was always meant to be and that she sort of cast aside in order to be a wife and a mother and to take care of her family. Callie is the child of the wilderness, and to the point where, the other women kind of, like Lottie specifically, almost sacrificed herself in order for Callie to rise, the new queen or the child of the wilderness to rise. So it seems very likely and just a matter of time that Shauna and Callie are going to face off with each other. And I think a huge catalyst for that could be obviously something happening to Jeff. That would definitely push Callie over the edge. A lot of people were speculating that Callie might actually kill Jeff as some sort of initiation or something like that. But I actually think that Callie and Jeff have such a close relationship that she would be absolutely devastated if something happened to her father. And so I would actually see Shauna doing something unhinged that would hurt Jeff or kill Jeff, and looking back to season 2, we had that dream sequence from Jeff where he has a dream that Shauna actually like kills him, like cuts his side all open or what have you. And so, there's foreshadowing to that idea. Obviously Jeff is mildly like afraid of Shauna. So I think that if something did happen to Jeff, it would be more likely that Shauna would be the one to do it. And then that would drive Callie to retaliate on her mother even more. And, that would really push Callie over the edge and make her into a completely different person. Now, what's going to happen with Taissa? She's got a lot of things going on between her and the man with no eyes. Like, what's going on with that? Are we just done with that storyline because of Van, like her dream of, like, I don't even know, like this vision of Taissa in the cave and the two of them fighting each other. So if other Ty is locked in the cave now, does that mean that the man with no eyes is no longer bothering her? Or, it just seems too easy. He's got to come back into play, right? But, what else is going to happen with Taissa? Obviously, we have Sammy and Simone. Like, are they going to come back into the picture, especially now that Van's out of the picture? Will Senator Taissa go back to work? We have to wonder. Obviously, the whole disgraced senator thing is not something that I was a huge fan of. So we have to wonder, like, what's going to go on with them. And also, we have to wonder about the Adam Martin thing. Okay. Now that's going back to season 1. And obviously in season 2, it played a huge part. But this is what I'm getting to. So, like, there are so many loose ends in the adult timeline. And this is their biggest problem. They're kind of abandoning storyline after storyline. And it's really making things disjointed. And there's a lack of cohesion. So, season 3 just kind of came out of the blue with a lot of random stuff that is completely disjointed from the previous 2 seasons. So with Shauna, in season 1, her whole arc was like her and Adam, and it ends with her killing him. And then in season 2, we have like the aftermath and the consequences of killing him. And that ends with like the cops, and then there's a twist with the cops. And then I guess, no more cops, I guess, because in season 3, they didn't come back. And now we have a completely new storyline with Melissa, who kills Van. So Melissa, who was a background character, throughout the whole series. She only had like 2 lines, and now we're making her like a main character, pushing her to the front. With Thaisa, season 1 was all about Senator Turner, Senator Thaisa. It ends with her sacrificing their dog just so that she can win this election. She's using witchcraft and the man with no eyes. Season 2 is her kind of reeling from the win, and her like connection to the man with no eyes is strengthening. It causes her to go find Van, and it kind of brings the group all back together because they all go to Lottie's compound. But season 3 completely abandons the senator storyline completely in favor of the love story with Van, which, could have worked, but then they killed Van. So it's like, what the heck? All the trajectories that Thaisa has been on are completely eliminated or sidelined. It doesn't really make any sense. And then with Lottie and Van, throughout season 1, Lottie was kind of like built up to be this powerful villain. Who the fuck is Lottie Matthews? And then in season 2, we have, Lottie and Van. They're kind of brought into the story. They're really well written and thought out. The audience was really connecting with them, and there was great chemistry on screen. Um, it was very cohesive with the teen timeline. Everything was really working. The casting was great, with their teen counterparts. But then in season 3, we just kill them off, and we're replacing them with Melissa. Like I said, a person who has no story no background, no skin in the game. And it almost feels like we're replacing these 2 characters, Lottie and Van, who we've grown very attached to, just to kind of replace them with Melissa so that we can explore Shauna's closeted bisexuality and her sort of kind of masculine energy that she's taken on, and it kind of ruled over her in the wilderness. And, all of this serving as a catalyst for Callie to rise as a child of the wilderness, I guess. And so, like, there, in certain ways it works, but it also really doesn't. And it really takes away from Van and Lottie and the hard work that those actresses put into these characters, to building these characters, but also the audience who felt really connected to those characters. Obviously, something happened between seasons 2 and 3, which kind of changed the story entirely. It caused the writers to abandon many of the established backgrounds of characters and just replace it with Hilary Swank. And I don't want to get too much into the weeds about all of my opinions on it, but I will say that the writers really need to find a way to kind of smooth all of this out. This is a massive speed bump that they created in season 3 by kind of switching out these characters. And what's kind of the worst part is that the show creators seem rather unbothered by the reactions of fans to this massive change in the story.
What would you say to a hardcore Yellowjackets fan who is just utterly distraught over what happened to Lottie?
Sorry.
And, we grew really attached to these characters. These are characters that they created, that they built up, and that they wrote, that we became attached to. And so then when we get upset that they're killing them off, the writers are like, well, sorry. Like, and it just feels kind of disrespectful to the audience and to the characters that they created. The reason fans are feeling this way is because Melissa is just not a character that anyone was familiar with until season 3. So we really have no emotional attachment to her. And we don't even know her last name, Melissa's or Kelly's. Van and Lottie had backstories and familial connections that were established in the pilot episode, which makes their deaths even more tragic. And it's not that their deaths are the problem. Again, I think it works with the story as a whole, with the women needed to come back together in order to die. But killing them off while forcing in a character that we have no attachment to or background for just doesn't work. It feels forced, and it feels cheap, like budget cheap. Not like just cheap story writing. Like, it feels like the budget is not allowing this. And if you ask, I think 9 out of 10 fans would have preferred more time with Lottie and Van over adding in Melissa. Or like, even if if the writers were always planning on Lottie and Van dying, they could have done it in a more respectful way where we're spacing those things out. Because adding in Melissa perhaps in season 4 might have felt a little less rushed and crammed in. It's almost like foie gras. Like, we've had enough. Please no more cramming it down our throat. Thank you. And I'm going to go out there on a limb. I'm going to blame Paramount and I'm going to blame the strike for what happened between seasons 2 and 3. Showtime was bought out by Paramount. There was a merger that happened in that time as well. So you can really feel the impact of Paramount on season 3 of Yellowjackets. And we still haven't gotten the season 4 renewal announcement. Yellowjackets has had its most popular season yet with season 3. So it truly just feels like a matter of time before we'll get the season 4 announcement. But I feel like Paramount is making them sweat a little bit for budgetary reasons because Yellowjackets is a huge show with many high caliber actors. And things have just changed so much in Hollywood over the past couple of years since the strike. So I don't think we'll get season 4 of Yellowjackets for probably about 2 more years because they've not done the renewal quite yet. And then we've got to organize all these actors, and it takes a lot of time and organization to get it all situated for all of these women who are growing into more and more popular actors. Paramount is having an effect on this series. And when we go back to this idea that all of the actresses are talking about how they had major scenes that were cut from season 3 that contained really important information for their characters and for their story arcs, it is disappointing to see that Paramount does have such an impact and so much control over this story. And it feels like part of that is connected to Lottie and Van being killed off and them adding in Melissa because Hilary Swank is another high caliber actress, almost a guarantee to get an Emmy for the show. And it almost feels like that was the whole reason that they brought her on board was to just say, you know what, we have to get an award for this show and it's going to happen come hell or high water. That's really disappointing for fans of the show because that's not what we're watching for. I don't really care if we're getting Emmys and that kind of thing. You know, I'm here to watch the show. It's not about the awards for me. But obviously, you know, Hollywood's different. Corporate America and corporate media companies like Paramount who have their own set of priorities and principles, which I don't necessarily agree with. Looking directly at you, Taylor Sheridan. So hopefully we will be getting the renewal and get Yellowjackets season 4 on track and get those bigger stories and more time to tell them. And I think that's the biggest thing that many fans want to tell Paramount, to tell the show creators. We need more time to explore these characters. Everything felt way too rushed, way too crammed in, and way too many changes for it to have a cohesive flow. That's my biggest problem, and I think the adult timeline is the biggest problem in that regard. I don't think it necessarily applied so much to the teen timeline, as much as it did to the adult timeline. It was just too much, too fast, too many changes all at once, and it really was overwhelming in a sense, to the point where, yeah, sometimes overwhelming can be fun, like with the hunt scene. We saw that, so many different things going on with so many different characters, but in the adult timeline we're dealing with adults. So hopefully they can, you know, kind of act accordingly. But of course, that's kind of the basis around Shauna's whole character, right? Is that she's not very mature or able to act like an adult. So
Who's Adam?
Why did you say that?
This happened before and there was a body?
but those are kind of my thoughts for season 4, what we have to look forward to. I am really excited. I'm very ready to get into season 4. Can't wait to hear the renewal announcement for it all and just to get into a new season. I had so much fun with season 3 and I've loved every season of Yellowjackets. I think season 3 was a great season, super fun. My biggest, constructive criticism would be that they need to spend a little more time exploring these characters and fleshing out their stories, especially when they're starting to incorporate more background characters and kind of try to flesh them out or give them more to do. Well, you have to spend time doing that. Like, give Melissa a last name. Crazy, right? All right, you guys. Well, thank you so much for watching. I am glad to get this out for you guys. And I do have more Yellowjackets content coming. I have a couple more videos that I do want to share with you guys. One for Akila and probably one for Shauna that I want to work on before we get too much further out from season 3. So keep an eye out for those. And I will hopefully get those out to you in the next few days. And I apologize. It's been a little quiet over here this week. I had a dentist appointment and some other, things to get taken care of and get the house caught up. Yellowjackets season was quite busy. So thank you for your patience, and I will get more content out for you guys this week. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for spending your season 3 of Yellowjackets with me and watching these videos. I hope you all enjoyed them, and I appreciate you, and we will see you in the next one. Bye. Mari out.
5, 6. You deserve everything that's coming to you.
8, 9.